Hey, Cam.
Hey there.
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. It's nice we met once before. It's nice to see you again, and thanks for taking some time to talk to me today.
Sure.
Um, this can be real casual.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind starting by stating your name and spelling it for me.
Sure. My name is, I'll use my official name. Okay. So, uh, it's Cameron Wyatt, and that's Camron, last name Wyatt, Wyatt.
And tell me where you work.
I work at the D51 Career Center in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's part of Mesa County's public educational system. It's a career
And what
technical
is
building.
career technical? What is your title?
It's principal.
Can you, tell me about COVID and how, and your community.
In our community, we don't have a high number as of yet, and I think it's because for the majority, a lot of people have been practicing the social distancing and wearing their masks. The concern, I think, in our community right now is the fact we do have an elderly population, and as the rest of the world starts to come to Grand Junction for outdoor recreation, that is going to be a difficult scenario for us, because once it gets into our elderly population, it's probably going to take hold. It's all around us, but just not in the Grand Valley as of yet. And so that has caused a lot of angst and anxiety it's almost like not knowing the future, right? We never know what the future holds, but to know that we don't know now is sort of, is disenchanting a lot of people that you wouldn't think would be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about what you did as the principal at the Career Center pre-COVID, before COVID showed up in February and March. What was life like at the Career Center?
The Career Center, it's a very small staff. And when I say that, we have 9 instructors and then a para for each. So we're a very close-knit family, if you will. Perhaps the greatest strength of the Career Center is we educate at-risk population through hands-on student-centered projects. We assess by performance. And so we get to know our kids relationship-wise very close, and that also extends to our staff. So before the outbreak, the pandemic, we were really close, and we utilized a lot of face-to-face interaction, a lot of things that we took for granted that we're now realizing are so valuable for communication. Eye contact, gestures, tone of voice, things that you just don't hear or feel in a text or even online remote learning.
Yeah. And tell me about the school district's response and what that's meant for the Career Center.
The response by D51 has been pretty succinct and well-defined, very cautionary. And what that has done to the Career Center is we went right into this remote learning environment. And for us as a Career Center, we base a lot of what we do on daily interaction and project-based. So just as our students look towards the teacher, mentors as guidance, and let's build this, let's do this, let's cook this, let's work in the preschool. When that went away through the remote learning, it just sort of left us hollow. So we're sort of hollow inside of who we are. We're sort of questioning a little bit right now as a staff, even students, where we're at, our importance. Yet on the other side of that coin, we realize that the way in which we do education at the Career Center is probably the best way to do education for kids. And the caveat is that the staff at the Career Center are basically kids growing up. And so they still have these same personal characteristics that require that one-on-one interaction and the sense of belonging and the sense of accomplishment of servicing your fellow human and creating opportunities for growth. And that is really causing, not only with our staff, but also with our student population, a disconnect, a real social disconnect. And I find it very ironic because up to this point in time, a lot of people say, put down that cell phone, get away from the computer. And yet the irony is now that is what's being put to the forefront as how to stay in touch.
Yeah.
That's very ironic.
So how going from seeing the students every day and working on physical projects to transitioning online remotely has got to be a big challenge. Do you think that that's something that you want to continue to do, or you're just ready as soon as you can to get back to the classroom?
You know, I really think that this is almost inevitable in the evolution of public education. I look at public education as an institution of slow to change to some respects. Yet this particular situation we find ourselves in, it has pushed public education, Mesa County, forward in the possibilities of online learning. I think for a career technical education school, one that's project-based, student-centered, performance-assessed, I think there's going to be some influence with this remote learning and online expectations and the delivery of educational materials. I'm just hoping that there's a balance. The integration or embedding of remote learning or online learning coupled with face-to-face, I think would probably be the most 21st century educational delivery model that everybody is seeking. Yet I think with all things, that pendulum swings left and then right. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to return to our face-to-face instruction, not lose that relationship piece that made us so special. But I do believe that the remote learning will influence that aspect of what made us sort of unique.
How are the students doing?
You know, I can tell you, if a measurement of doing well is engagement with instructors, our first week we were extremely high. Our kids is a new thing. A lot of our kids had computers of their own now, and so they wanted to be like everybody else and get online and do that chat thing. And then the second week, it waned a little bit. And then the third week, D51 came out with a policy of, we understand there's going to be some inequity throughout this delivery process. Some people have internet, some don't. Some have the ability to navigate this technology and the support at home. And so it was sort of stated that your grade really wouldn't be affected. So we're just going to work through the essentials of learning and not necessarily new materials. And what the message to some of our kids was, school's out.
Yeah.
And so the newness, the shininess had worn off. It's not going to affect my grade. So they went into a little bit of survival mode. And that's been really difficult on the staff to not see their kids. And I think it's been pretty difficult on the kids because that face-to-face interaction created a bond.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're at home, perhaps maybe in an environment that's not as healthy as what school was for them. And now there's a social emotional deficit, if you will.
Whether they realize it or not, perhaps.
I don't think the kids necessarily realize that because they're so good at coping and hiding, putting it under the surface. But we find that those tend to be some of the resounding issues when we have behaviors that aren't really too productive. So that's for the kids. As for the adults, they're processing it. The staff-wise, they're processing this information. And there are some, as one of the staff members said, I go down that rabbit hole more frequently than usual, but it's very interesting. And even just on a non-professional level, the willingness for people to reach out, but then still feel hollow inside. And that's, I'm not suffering, but I'm feeling that. And I feel that from adults and I feel that from kids.
Yeah, me too. Do you feel like your students are aware of resources out there for them and that they're able to get them? Do you feel like there might be a lack in education or knowledge for the parents on how to get the resources that they need? I talked to a gal, Shannon Robinson, the other day. She works with youth and houselessness, and was saying that she's seen a little bit of an uptick in our community and kids having issues at home.
I think the resources are there. I think Mesa County and our Grand Valley in particular, it has a lot of resources. They're really putting it out on the mass media. The school's making a pretty stellar effort to make sure that people are aware that there's help for this, for that. I think where the concern comes from my lens is that I don't think the young kids or our students, I don't think they know what to ask for. They feel empty. They feel alone. But yet there's all this technology. I can't be alone. I'm right here. It's part of their regular world, but there's this sense of hollowness, of disconnect. And it's all over mass media. I mean, you turn on the TV and it's always like, this is how we stay connected. We have all the movie stars doing their thing and painting their faces. And we have people going out on their balconies at 7:00 at night and beating their pans and singing. And we have people writing on sidewalks, first responders. We have little kids running around the community, painting rocks, saying, happiness is a choice. And we have all of that, but I don't think it resonates in the internal aspect of the soul right now. I think the unsureness of the future is what's scaring people more than anything.
What really worries me is that the long-term effects of COVID-19 and our economy shrinking, and what that's going to do to families living paycheck to paycheck, and how long it's going to take them to recover, and then the emotional and social kinds of problems that are going to go along with that are going to just be exasperated by burdens that are going to last for a long time. How are families going to pay for medical care if they get sick, or rent, if they are unemployed, and then how that's going to impact their youth at home.
And most of these families were living paycheck to paycheck, or if not paycheck to paycheck, they were already behind the 8 ball. And so, I mean, when parents are laid off or, released because the economy can't support what they're doing, even just, a lot of our families, they were working professionals, right? So they work 9 to 5. They are those grocery store workers. They are those daycare providers. They are, that's that middle income working class, what we now refer to as the new collar worker, that are technology based, but yet they're still day to day going to a place of work. That's going to be really tough because just in my neighborhood, I have 4 neighbors that are unemployed, not laid off, but unemployed. Businesses have shut down and downsized. And we have currently in Mesa County, there is an increase in domestic violence being reported. And so I'm very hopeful that we get back to some sense of normalcy, but I think that word normalcy is going to be redefined pretty substantially.
How do you feel about Mesa County has applied for a waiver from the governor's office so that we can perhaps move forward a little quicker with reopening our local economy? How do you feel about the current, maybe how do you feel about our state's response initially and then the current situation here in Mesa County?
I think I would like to take that question from a national to a state to a local level, if I could.
Please.
Myself, I felt that maybe the response on a national perspective was not as strong as it could have been in a proactive way. It was more reactive. People are sick. We have to care for, versus being proactive, which, testing, identifying, and being very knowledgeable and very open about things like social distancing, wearing masks. And I know this is the United States of America, and there's these rights that people refer to. And but yet, when we started reacting to this pandemic on a national level, the only thing we saw in front of us on the media front was these people that were oppositional, defiant. They were still holding church services. They're still going to go to the beach. They're still going to hold Mardi Gras. All these things. Everybody's like going, "It's my right, but is it really smart?" Okay.
Yeah.
Then I saw at the state level, I personally saw this division amongst federal and state rights, almost like some of the same common characteristics of federal rights versus state rights, and what governors wanted to intervene and be very proactive and shut things down and or testing and so on and so forth. Yet they were dealing with just even trying to find gloves and masks, So
Mm-hmm.
even the basic necessities to be able to handle a pandemic were non-existent from a federal to a state level. So here comes this trend. So then it became a whole bunch of disinformation at a local level because people were just sort of not fully processing that. I don't know how many times I heard it. Oh, geez, out of 8 people, 8 out of 10, 8 are going to survive. it's only going to be two.
Hey, it's only two people that we have to bury.
Yeah. And then now we're currently today, now we see that they've gone back and done extensive research and they find that it possibly is airborne. In some of the open markets where it originated from, it's still present. We 2 weeks ago, we had the big push to everybody go donate blood. And there's going to be antibiotics in this blood that's going to help you survive it, and but not guaranteed. And so it's just all this information just sort of flows, and it flows faster. Misinformation and I guess correct information flows so fast in this day and age of technology and a push of a button, and I just see that escalating and moving forward to Mesa County. Petitions the governor for, basically a stay of some requirements because our numbers are low. But it's only 60 miles away in Mount Rose where our numbers aren't quite so low. And you go 100 miles away as you get into the valley, as you cross over into Denver, that it's not looking good at all. And as people migrate and move around, the ski facilities are shutting down. Well, those worker bees, people, they go someplace. Well, they come to Grand Junction and other places and work at hotels for the tourism. So we know we're going to be exposed to it. It's just what can we do to lessen it? And then there's that underlining question: is it really as bad as everybody's saying? There's still a tremendous amount of people that are like, maybe it isn't as bad as what they're saying, but yet look what it did to our economy just by. I mean, you don't really have to catch the virus in order to be probably affected by it in more ways than one. And holy cow, what a depressing, I sound so depressed. What a depressing scenario of, you're talking socially, emotionally, physically,
Financially, spiritually,
can't go to church. And then when going to, when going to a spiritual place, people are seeking individuals for spiritual comfort, right? And so, you have to be careful with that too, because if you go to the well that's dry, oh my gosh, misery loves company.
Yes.
So this is going to be a very interesting time for us as people for across the board. Now I'm talking worldly. There's all this pick me up, stay together. We stay together by staying connected. But I think we're in for a ride.
Yeah. I hope that some of the things that we've learned and some of the spotlight that this has shown on some of the disparities and inequities in our society, I hope it'll be a catalyst for change. And another part of me thinks that might be a very long journey that we take. As Americans, right, we're pretty in the here and now. We don't plan so far ahead compared to some other cultures. What are you going to tell? What have you told? What are you telling? And what will you tell students about this experience?
As a principal, I think I have to be cautionary about when I share this experience, because the role that I play in an institution. I think my sharing of information will be tempered by being a realist. To to start with the simplest of greetings of we missed you. Um, where have you been in our world? We value you. We do not pass judgment on you. We're just happy to see you. And I think that would be the building blocks for myself as a leader of a building to spread that word of welcome home back. And then I think selling that wholesale and then being very open to see what other people's experiences have been for the past 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I think about the following. There's going to be a group of seniors that are going to be wearing masks at their graduation, but their parents aren't invited.
Yeah.
And that's a tradition in our country. It's a rite of passage, I guess you could say. It seems to be the high school graduation is the rite of passage from little kid to young adult. The 10 million times you're asked, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? And this benchmarked a time physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, where expectations are had of young people. Yet I think a lot of young people are saying, what's that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think of graduation, I think of just even job opportunities. There's a lot of employment, but it's in a certain sector. In the healthcare, for example, we had 15 CNAs almost ready to seal the deal.
Mm-hmm.
All they needed to do is just a couple little pieces of paper here and there, a chapter or two, and performance test. Yet when you talk about this pandemic, you find out that the CNAs are really the frontline people. They're the ones cleaning the rooms. They're the ones delivering food. They're the ones who are predominantly at the nursing homes, which we are now starting to see where this pandemic is really taking hold. So here we had helpers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Young people who wanted to move forward into their young adult lives and contribute and maybe have a role to having a system, a public education system, and also just societal that said, stay at home. We can't finish your credentialing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on and so forth. When we get a handle on this, you can finish up and step into it. But that's sort of a mixed message a little bit. It's like that rock that says happiness is a choice, but only if you get to read that rock.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk all day and you didn't get to see that rock, maybe happiness isn't a choice. So that's what I've shared so far is I think is fairly negative, but I think there's a hidden silver lining here. And I think it is actually the young people. I think that the young people, at least that I hang out with and I have in my campus, are extremely resilient. They have gone through a lifetime of up and downs, and they are experienced at coping and overcoming. And I think behind all of this, we are going to see a generation that comes out and says, inequality is not okay. We can come together and make noticeable change on a multitude of levels without sacrificing independent freedoms, because they have already done it up to this point in time. And they've done it when they are not in control of anything. They've done it without finances. They've done it without support, family, spiritual, and all of that goes into making a human being fairly well-rounded. So I think we're going to see a different world, and I'm very excited to see how that influences the next generation, because I don't think this is going to go away. And I think masks are going to be around. I think washing our hands, there's people wash their hands so much now, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't, it's so dry. So that was just a little tiny things, right? But
Yeah,
I think those all have implications into what the future has to hold.
yeah. Um, yeah, I really hope that this develops a young generation of activists who are ready to take on the world. Um, how will you be better prepared for things like this in the future as a school principal?
I spent the first 3 weeks of this adventure, what I've classified it as the remote learning adventure. For first 3 weeks, making sure that the staff and kids had resources to sort of not miss a beat, right? And then I've spent 1 week reflecting on a professional and personal level, trying to get my being balanced in balancing my personal life and the pandemic, how it has influenced my personal life, along with my professional life. So for me, I think it's about a balance, right? I think it's about a balance. And when the next great big thing happens, I think I will be better for it to lead with not necessarily with a service heart, but with a more of a focus of um, lay the foundation earlier to not have so much anxiety and stress and change to my personal life that has happened. Because I'll just share. I sleep about 4 hours a day.
That's it. I couldn't do that. Hard. I've been doing these interviews the last couple of days and talking with different people, and I get off the phone and I just cry. um, it hadn't affected me that much. I didn't think I could sit and watch the news and get myself all riled up, and then I could, go for a hike or whatever. And this project is really emotional. But I hope that something good comes of it, and that it really does create some sort of archive for people to look back on and not forget. Because I think that we as a culture really tend to think of ourselves first, put ourselves first before others, and focus on the here and now and not being prepared or not, I don't know.
Well, and we're service oriented. You wouldn't be doing this interview unless you were service oriented, and unfortunately, in the profession that you're in and I'm in, and my staff and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in this Grand Valley, they care so much for others to try to obtain an equilibrium of righteousness for all, that they're so damn hard on themselves. And so when they hear the personal stories and somebody says, I don't sleep because I'm so entrenched and engaged trying to facilitate things that perhaps are out of our control, it touches the inner soul, right? So we're not talking something we read in a book. We're not talking something that we modeling. It's something that's innate to our human soul. And that's that hollowness I talked about earlier. it is human nature to be wanted, to give, to protect, to be part of something greater than yourself. And when you can't strive for that and get that feeling that you're a part of it, then you're not. And then you do this. You listen to other people's stories, right? You do. I listen and I try to figure, and then I put that button down on, God, what more can I do? What less could I do? And what happens is we'll close this computer down and we'll go,
Yes.
I'm so done with this, right? It would be a wonderful time to just unplug as it grabs, like you said, a hike, a walk or something, but it releases those endorphins, but it doesn't heal the heart.
Doesn't take it away. No, it's still there.
And so I'm very concerned about that, because even just myself and for my family, for kids, I mean, this is a scary thing. I can only imagine in 1942 when over the radio comes this announcement that Pearl Harbor's been bombed, or 9/11 when a building's been broke, and the hollowness and the uniting. But this is something.
It just goes on and on with no end in sight. We have nothing that we can do to control it.
It's scary.
And then we look to our leaders and we get mixed messages. And I was reading a New York Times article today that our nation is no longer going to not enforce, but recommend social distancing any longer, because the states are doing that. We need leadership. So frustrating.
It is, and it's you know what? I have parents who are old, right? Because I'm getting old. I have kids at school. That are health impaired. This could be bad for them. So that worries me a lot. So that's where the pieces fall. I think there's lots of people with that same hollowness soul.
I think, and it erupts differently for different people. It does for me in different ways every day. Sometimes I want to retreat. Sometimes I want to go out and shake people and say, "What are you doing?" Sometimes I want to put on my educator hat and start preaching a sermon. It's a roller coaster.
It is, and that is that humans feel good about themselves when there's an equilibrium, there's a balance, there's this homeostate of fluidity, and I think it has to do because when we were little tiny people, we just floated around, right? But now we're out here in this big bad world, and we still innately just try to strive for this balance, this teeter-totter of emotions, and our environment's changing so rapidly that we as humans, the top of the food chain, want to be able to control it, and there's no controlling this. This could literally be your lucky day or your not quite so lucky day. And even on the good part of not quite so lucky day, I keep telling my friends and family, who wants to have the flu for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay? And let alone now they're finding out there's some long-term effects with equilibrium and
And
cognitive
lung damage.
functioning and lung damage, scarring, it's almost like you've been smoking a cigarette for the last 60 years of your life. And I'm like going, oh my gosh.
And the possibility that you will not retain immunity.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I think as I do some reading, because like I said, I'm not sleeping that well, but so what I try to do is find knowledge to empower myself with. But I think they're going to find an inoculation. It'll be just another shot eventually. Of course, now this time it's different because in the early days when they had polio and they had all this other stuff, only rich people got a hold of those until it became an outcry. This is already at that stage. And so I don't think anybody based on social economic dispositions will be denied, but it's going to take time for the human race to have some sense of security and control over this. And oh gosh, it's just it's not a terrible time. It's a very emotional time. And in the public school setting, I find this so ironic. You know, in our community, we've turned down bond issues, getting schools and so on and so forth. And yet, if there's one joke, there's a million about the parent who is like, I can't be a parent, I can't be a teacher, I can't go to work, I can't do all this. And yet that's pretty much, when you think about the 8 hours a day that a child was going to public school, that teacher was mom, dad.
Mm-hmm.
We have schools that provide morning breakfast, we have lunch, and we have afternoon snack, and we have after school programs, all in order to make sure this young person is well taken care of. And now that's not there.
Yeah.
It's gone. And yet there's still those people that run around saying teachers don't deserve what they get. They get 3 months a year off.
Well, maybe now after you've been the teacher.
Yeah, maybe. You know, there's all kinds of jokes out there, and there's all kinds of cartoons now. It's like it's like whoever thought I was going to have to teach my third grader how to do math, and we're like, oh, yeah, that's what we thought. But you know, and science and all these things that we really feel are necessities.
We're worried about it too.
Yeah. So you know, as a professional, this has been my passion for 30 years. I've done a lot of jobs, but this is my profession: teaching, leading, and this type of at-risk kids. I love these kids. I know they're so resilient, but I also know that this is something that is, well, there's hardly anybody on the face of the earth that has any kind of experience with this. I mean, the Spanish flu was 8 years ago or something, and it's amazing anybody survived that. I mean, let alone now. But to just think about this must, you know, when we see things on the news about Africa and Ebola breakout and SARS and stuff in these third world countries that don't have the resources, here we are, the strongest nation on the face of the earth, and we can't even get enough masks or rubber gloves on people who are trying to save other people's lives. It's like, that's a shift in the mindset, pretty substantial.
Yeah.
But
I hope it brings about lasting change.
I'm hoping. We're going to find out, because Mesa County is going to open their doors, and it will be very interesting to see if social norms and values shift for the betterment of the whole, or will it become an I or a me situation where I'm going to do what I want to do.
It's my right.
It's my right. And boy, you know, that's sort of disheartening for some, for sure.
Same. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I think documenting the emotion. I think right now what's happening in mass media is documenting events to make people feel good, but I don't think they're diving down into the emotion, the core emotion that's creating this unrest or this happiness. Um, and I appreciate you inviting me, but also I appreciate the effort that you're putting out to document raw emotion and truthfulness, right? Because I think you've probably selected people that are vulnerable and willing to speak truths at risks of maybe being exposed. but I think that in itself is important. I saw that 2 weeks ago, CMU was collecting journals from young kids that just to put in archives to just document the spoken word into a written format of what young people were thinking. And it would be eclectic, but I think in years to come, not too distant future, people are going to read up on this. I don't think this is going to be like 9/11. I think this is going to shape a lot of what goes on in our world.
Thanks for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.